Oh, hi, I'm Tom Anderson, and this is Ritchie, Principal from Waira Intermediate. As part of my community story, I'm interviewing Ritchie today. And Ritchie, you're okay to be recorded,
Absolutely.
and you're okay to talk about your journey through education in Waira
Mm-hmm.
and some of the things that are happening down there.
Sure.
And you're okay to get if I can use your name as part of my research.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks very much, Richie. Okay, so the first question, Richie, would be a little bit along the lines of, could you tell me a little bit about yourself and your role as an educator in Wairau?
Sure. So I'm currently principal at Whitehall Primary. I'm the lead principal of our Kahuiapo. And education-wise, I went through Nuhaka School, um, then on to Whitehall College, then moved to Auckland and carried on with secondary. Left um, Went to work for a bit, then went through Waikato University, Canterbury University, and Massey with various diplomas, degrees, and education and learning's just been a big part of me.
Cool.
Mm.
So after having such a worldly experience, what brought you back to Wairau?
For us, it's family, and although we travelled between the UK and New Zealand, this is the longest in the 30 years we've been married, where we've stayed in Wara. And we decided with our daughter coming along later in life that we need to stay somewhere for a bit longer. So Wara has kept us there, although we've visited, to and fro to the UK, yeah, since she's been born too.
Awesome.
But yeah, very passionate about Wairau and the Wairau district, not just Wairau town, because Wairau encompasses the whole district, starting from, for the schools that we include in our Kahuiako, for example. South is, the furthest south is Puerto if you go north, you've got Waikato Moana, Ohoka, Ruakaturi. Over to this way, over the east, you have Nuhaka and Mahi, and then in town, all the town schools, the Kurakaupapa and Wairau College.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's quite a big variety there as well, isn't there? Even within the district of Wairau itself, there's a lot of variety.
Absolutely.
Um, so what would you say are some of the positives and the enablers that enhance educational opportunities for students and the teachers in Wairau and the Wairau district?
I think the enablers is the fact that we have a lot of local grown educators. However, I want to flick quickly to the barriers almost, but with that, it's an aging population.
Yeah.
So a vision I've had since leading Kahui is to develop a succession plan for our aging teachers and principals that will soon be leaving our profession, and hence why we have a lot of trainee teachers that are local, grown up locally, and or have returned to Waiora. So an enabler is that we have local people. We now have more than we've ever had the support of iwi and hapu,
Yeah.
and engaged with them because of treaty settlements or settlements still to be to occur. Whereas that was a barrier before that Maori weren't at that level of receiving support or being acknowledged even. So that's an enabler. We have a Ministry of Education which is on the change, that has become more understanding of Wairau and how things just the Wairau way can be quite different, even though Gisborne's only an hour and 10 up the road. It's very different, and it comes with its challenges at times, but the enabler, I guess, is the fact that we have the ministry having this change, positive change.
Cool.
So too with the RTLB service, where once we were what do we call it now, Wirral based and managed. The change came in 2011, I think 2012, maybe just before that, where it was managed from Gisborne. That gave some enabling to education, but for me personally, it also became a barrier.
Yeah.
Which others may have talked to you about. But
not so much along those lines, but I've heard some people say that Wairau is almost Wairau and Northland. One person said to me, Wairau and Northland are the two forgotten parts of the country.
Yeah.
So it's refreshing to hear you say that the ministry has been very supportive. So that sounds like.
And even most recently, so we have I'm not sure what her role is, but we've got someone now Wirral based as a advisor or education. What's it, SEA, special ed advisor. So an education advisor based in there, full-time, permanent, which we've not ever had. And that only happened last term, sorry.
Yeah.
So that enables us to have local people on the ground to support Wirral, as opposed to people coming from Gisborne or Napier, or Hawke's Bay, Tairāwhiti.
Because you're halfway in between, aren't you? So is there some? I mean, I've got all these. This funny, like when you join these interviews, I've got all these specific order of questions, but I can see it's really hard to sort of stay in that order because you're bringing up stuff that further down. And so I think we'll just let it run as it runs. In some ways, if that's okay. I've lost my train of thought now, but I think I'll just go to the next question. Local people.
Yeah.
Do you have a problem getting local people in professional roles in general?
In general, no, but in more specific terms, it's the experienced ones we have the trouble with.
Right.
For example, and in confidence, although this part might have to be edited, as the sole lead of our Kahui Ako, it's a big responsibility and a big role, but trying to bring someone else in with the experience when we have, for example, 8 of our 16 principals are less than 1 to 2 years experience. So it's the experience part and the expertise that we need to be able to support us. So in general, no, we don't have, it's not an issue, but when it comes to the more experienced principals and teachers, it's a bit of a struggle.
Is that something that just given sort of 5 or 6 years' time will be better if those people stay in those roles and develop that experience?
Yeah, absolutely. Good point, because as we've got that succession plan coming through and teachers leaving, we've got, for example, at our school, we have 6 teacher aides training for teachers. Now, they're all at different, some are in the same year, but we've got one who's doing a post-grad now because she's done her 3 years of training, and another one already has a degree, so she's only doing 1 year, whereas we've got 4 who have just started this year.
Right.
So we're talking 2026, at least before they go into the classroom. Right. So other schools have the same situation where they're able to train locally.
Yeah.
But hopefully that means that when I leave and when any other principal leaves, it means that it's not going to create a void. Hopefully we'll have others coming in.
Succession plan. What about other professionals? Along the lines of, say, learning support, LENS, health professionals, those sorts of people. Like you need those people. It takes a village to raise a child. What about access to those sort of support services? Does Wairau struggle in those areas a little bit, or is that okay?
I think it's okay. It's about relationships and connections.
Yeah.
That's the big part of this role in education, is to, like, we have a multi-agency approach to things. But sometimes that doesn't always work. It's more the being able to pick up the phone and ring a manager of a social service or something and say, hey, got this situation, tap into it, and then be solution focused.
Yeah.
Sometimes when we have too many tables with too many people at, it can become an actual barrier as opposed to an enabler.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's not just Wairo, I think. That
Mm.
does. We sort of run that philosophy here too in Gisborne. We call it too many cars in the driveway.
Yes.
Driveway.
Yeah, yeah.
Just try and
Yeah.
keep it simple and just keep one or two people who
Share
are
the
able
vehicles,
to.
share the load.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Could you explain some of the challenges that tamariki and whānau face from an educational perspective in Wairau?
At the top of it is the system that has always not supported Wairau because of isolation, and also being the too hard basket to reach, let alone geographically. And then I guess why I didn't mention the racist part of it is that all the research has shown that the forgotten people are the ones in the rurals who have all the everything against them, basically. So we have the highest deprivation rate in New Zealand, and yet it's taken 3 years since that report came out, and then Te Haerenga last year to shine the light on the issue. And clearly it is race-based, and then becomes a challenge. And those who own that, and I'm not putting a plug in here, but the difference for Wairau since the Ministry of Ed has changed is to some extent because of the people who are at the leadership part. Administration. No, in the greater district, the bigger district. If we didn't have some of those people who empathised for Wairau, let alone Māori, we wouldn't be having some of the structural changes happening. And yeah, so
some people have really had to go above and beyond what they should have to fight for
Wairau.
Cool. And it's starting to make a positive difference.
Things take time. You don't want them to happen quicker, but unfortunately they don't. But it's moving in the right direction, I believe.
Do you find it difficult to recruit teachers for positions, or is there enough staff? Like if you're advertising a job, do you get much response back?
We've never really had an issue. Sorry, I'm talking district-wide, aren't I? Not just
no,
district-wide. Yeah, it is.
My story is sort of the district as well, encompassing everything.
Yeah, it is. We always have the foreign teachers applying. Every time. I advertised a job end of last year, and a lot of foreigners. But I was fortunate that one of the teachers wanted to change and came to Wairau Primary. But we have that inter-school movement that occurs sometimes.
Yes. Yeah.
But trying to recruit and retain is an issue for Wairau.
So retention.
Yeah.
How does a foreign teacher enjoy, say, the Wairau environment and teaching in Wairau? What countries do they come from?
Well, the latest one was from Wales, and Fiji, and South Africa. So those were the last 3 that I'm aware of. The Welsh couple barely lasted a year. The Fijians just arrived. The South African lasted 1 trip. So that gives an indication that the retention part of it.
Yeah, that's a real challenge then, isn't it?
Yeah. And if they don't come in and do their research around New Zealand, Te Tiriti, and understand what being a New Zealand European New Zealand Māori and New Zealand Fijian, what that really looks like, then it's always a struggle. It becomes a barrier for them, and particularly if they've come from countries where they are the ethnic minority, and if they come from a country where they're the dominant ethnicity or race, then the struggle for them is to realise Te Tiriti is quite different to what they have in their country.
Right.
And that's just changed in the last 5 to 10 years that you would have seen yourself. Probably more in your training as RTLB, even though I trained 10 plus years ago, is more than I had. So too with Sarah and any of the others. They probably didn't have as much Te Tiriti papers or learning than you do, which is brilliant.
Yeah.
And
that is a really important aspect of our job, isn't it? And if you come into your job and you don't have an awareness of it, it would be a big challenge, wouldn't it? New country and a totally different environment to teach in with expectations around certain things that would be very challenging. So, sorry.
No, I was just going to say, and it's all the research shows, Māori don't expect Māori to engage only with Māori. When a non-Māori engages in a Finn way, in a Manaki way, in a empathetic way, just the difference, Because I've got colleagues who are non-Māori, but they have the kids eating out of the palm of their hands. They have the whānau engaging because they see the value in tikanga and the culture and understanding people's experiences whilst not having experienced it themselves. Doesn't mean you can't empathise. So there's all of that. It's about letting the child know you don't just rock up because of the education, you rock up with the whole picture in mind. And that empathy.
The relationships you were talking about with networks, it's at every level, isn't it?
Yep.
Every single level, start to finish, it's so important.
So,
cool. All right. Well, what supports are there for students who are not succeeding or who are disengaging in education? Because from reading the Te Haringa report and from talking to a number of people from the district, it seems like there is an issue, definitely for some students and some whānau who are disengaged from education. So what sort of supports are there, do you find?
There are the educational supports like learning support, RTLB. We have various agencies locally that we can tap into support. The ones that make the biggest difference are the ones who come to the table regardless of their knowledge of the family. And that almost goes back to a barrier earlier, is whilst we've got strength from the locals, the local strength, it can be a barrier in the sense that if, like, I'm on the generation where when a family enrolled their child recently, I went to school with the grandmother, I taught the mother, and now I've got the children coming on. So it's 3 generations. But those 3 generations have often had negative experiences with agencies or with school themselves. So there's all of that, making sure that at times we've got to go outside of Wairua to get the support because there's too much.
A fresh perspective, without
judgment,
without bias, even unconscious bias or anything like that.
Absolutely.
Cool. And is there other support networks down there? The whānau themselves, are they, willing to engage and in general, I guess?
In general, there is. You can always find someone who, in a family, who will be that nanny or papa or uncle and auntie who will get the family around. I actually had this on Friday. We had a boy who, long story short, it was going to lead to a stand down, potentially. Tried to engage the family, the mother disengaged, the grandmother came on board, and tried to get the services around the table. Got to that point, but the mother's now opted to take the child elsewhere.
Right.
One, because I made the call to involve the police, and two, to involve Orang Tamariki. So it's that flight phase, but the nanny is the one that will bring them back around the table.
Right.
No agency, in this occasion anyhow. And I think that's across the board. When principals and teachers find the right family member and the right agency to support or be those leads, it makes all the difference. Big difference.
Once again, it's those relationships, isn't it? And it's also known, if I'm not the right person, then I'll help you to find the right person. Or you be the lead person in this case, because,
And the experience, and you would have had it in London, going into a school where I had a lot of Lithuanians and Romanians, Eastern European students. It took me ages to say their names correctly. But honestly, once, or just to greet them in Lithuanian, made the hugest difference. And so some of the English teachers I talked with who said, "Oh, how come you got invited to, this function or that function?" It was all about those connections, those relationships. And, Kiwis find it hard to get our tongue around some of those European names. And the same with the lot of Asian children like Pakistani and ones who were from Bangladesh. Once you got their names and once you got their greeting and once you met their parents and got them around, again, you had the meeting out of the palm of your hand. But it's relationships and connections. I keep saying that, don't you?
Yeah,
you're going
but
to listen to this and think that's
but
all he
it's so
knows.
true. And I think in a small place like Wairau district is large, but when you're talking about, say, Wairau township, it is so important to maintain those relationships. And there can be some difficult conversations sometimes that you have, but you need to do them, don't you, so that you can move forward afterwards as well.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Some of my research that I've done has touched on the gangs within the community of Wairau as well, and I find that quite interesting. So how do you engage with the gang community to help their tamariki achieve success?
Go to their homes.
Yep.
Always have the open door policy of them rocking up, and not going in with a judgmental eye.
Yep.
And so we're conscious of what we say, how we say it. I had a situation last week where I was relating a situation to a person, and long story short, they made the assumption that who I was talking about was a gang member. And when I said, no, he's actually a 55-year-old European Pākehā New Zealander who has this situation, that situation, that situation, and who unleashed on on three of my staff with the most horrible words and horrible things because he, misinformation and all that. So I asked the person, why did you think it was a gang member? And they says, because I made a judgment and obviously learning from that.
Yeah.
And I said, that's going to be key as you move forward in your job because, gangs, yes, we have that issue, but these are human beings who are trying to find their way through a system that for whatever reason and many reasons have not necessarily forced them to, but led them down a path that isn't favourable in most people's eyes.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, They are people who we have to treat as equally as the white-collar person who comes into our school with a tie. Yeah.
It's interesting. I found this really fascinating, and the other person that I've interviewed for this story said basically much the same. In fact, she's repeating that, sort of said that we're actually not doing enough to include them. Because she said there's a lot of positives that they do in the community, and she brought up Cyclone Gabrielle and a lot of the organisation that went on in the days and weeks following that was never once reported. And I know a lot of us have an unconscious bias, myself as well, and it's been refreshing to do this and learn the other side and see how you are engaging and how they're how they engage with the community down there as well. So,
I went to a principals conference last year, and they asked me to do a presentation on Te Haerenga. So during the presentation, one of the previous speakers had talked about what's the university in Dunedin? Otago. Had talked about Otago and a lot of things there and how awesome it is. And so I spun it around when I did my presentation without. I said to him, I don't want you to be offended by what I'm going to say in my presentation, but you've just given me a thought. And he goes, okay, I'll try not to be offended, sort of thing. But I knew it wouldn't. But I talked about that unconscious bias, but also just outright racism. And I said, our previous speaker talked about the Otago University, this and that. Let me talk to you about a situation with the Scarfies. So for me and I've got nephews and family who have gone to Otago.
I've got some friends as well. I know what goes on there.
Yeah, and I said, and yet, how often do you see that group of individuals who are terrorizing streets during, induction, compared to why it all been on the news because of a gang incident, and with one incident, so it just gave some thinking. And then I started my presentation on Te Haerenga. And I said, so this is what we're contending with in Wairoa. A lot of those judgments that still exist. And, my nephews who have been there, they're the lighter shade of brown, got the light eyes, and they don't pass for Māori. But once they get there and they hear the coastie voice, they know, oh, you're married. But it's the stark contrast. It's incredible. So, yeah. And then you see on the news, like last night, I watched the news for a bit, and you see the bit about the drug culture or the 3 or 4 guys who have been drugging,
I saw that in the news the other day.
So that's the first time I've seen something like that for a long time being published. We went through that period where Māori were identified on news. Māori male, da-da-da-da. But when it was a Caucasian or Pākehā, it wasn't the race that it mentioned first. And so we've grown up with a generation. So I was pursuing a police career when I was 17 up in Auckland. I was still going down Leslie High during senior year, but I thought I'm going to go down the police line. And there was this whole culture that was developing there that I just thought, man, this is quite ugly, quite not sure that I'm going to be heading down that line. Yeah.
I did much the same.
Yeah. Did you?
Yeah, I looked quite seriously at the police when I was in my 20s.
Yeah.
I came away after going to some of the training days with the fitness day.
Oh, yeah.
That hit near the Harbour Bridge there. And I came away just going, I don't know if it's for me.
Yeah.
And I just thought it's actually not that I'm anti-rugby. It just seems like one big rugby club.
Yeah.
And I just didn't think I was going to fit. And I thought, actually, that's not the sort of career you can sort of just...
Yeah.
You've got to be 100% committed. So that's, I found teaching after that.
Yeah. Interesting.
So at a high school level, I read this, I did a little bit of research on it. At a high school level, there's some initiatives such as, I don't know if you know, guy called Bronson Tither from
Bronson Tither?
Tither, is that how you say it? From Motivation. And he's doing some work with some of the tamariki who are involved with that. How do you, I mean, you probably already answered this question. How do you see that fitting along with what schools are actually doing? Or does it sit separately from what schools are doing?
It has the potential to be inclusive, but as I see it now, it sits quite alone as an alternative.
Yeah.
I was at Eastern Cafe with Bronson last week, and he's now engaging with a Gisborne, which I didn't know existed. What's it called? Gang liaison officer, who's a police officer, and trying to work through with gangs. And Bronson, I taught Bronson, he's motivated himself and he wants a change. There is that embedded part of him in the gang culture, and until if he's ever ready to change that, it's up to him, but it's strongly entrenched there. So he's driven to try and help educators and authorities, the system, to understand the gang life, and that the children who he's got on there, and I know there's opposition to what Bronson is trying to achieve. However, I believe he's trying to do something that will help the children, help them be grounded in who they are, whether they re-engage in education or not. He's doing what he can.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, the other person that I interviewed with, we really felt like that's a genuine pathway for a number of students, and like you say, maybe not academically, but as far as setting them up to have some skills, some life skills, and be contributing members of society. She felt it was a really, really important alternative that we didn't neglect because of bias or racism. So
and there's that discussion that he's recruiting for the gang. Whether that's part of, I don't believe personally it's part of what Bronson's trying to do. I believe he's looking for ways that Māori primarily who have been removed from the system because of what was mentioned in Te Haringa, have somewhere else to go that will ground them culturally, but not necessarily, or not at all, I don't believe, to get them towards gang life.
Awesome. Just got a couple more questions, Richard. Do you think Cyclone Gabriel's had a detrimental effect on staff and student achievement, engagement and focus, or have things gotten back to normal since then, pretty much? Do you think?
I don't think it's going to get back to normal for a while, Tom. It's had a more profound impact than I realised, and I think starting back this term, although we only had three days last week, I could still see how tired our staff are, and how the children are still. We've had a big focus on ensuring our children's well-being since COVID, but my message now to staff is we've got to now refocus more on the learning and achievement and progress and helping them, because we've gone all out for them and we've got whānau on board. So when we have our whānau engagement huis, it's about, okay, we've done I believe a very good job in supporting you through COVID, through this natural disaster. We don't know what's around the corner, but we need you to help us re-engage children with learning. Because it's one thing to attend, as you know, but to be engaged in learning is the next step. So we've got implementing programs, but not programs. It's almost like it's just what we do, not naming it a program or saying, okay, well, we've got circle time and all the rest of it to help with this. It's just what we do. It's the Wairau primary way. It's the Wairau way.
It becomes part of the culture.
Yeah.
Don't even think twice about it.
Absolutely.
Okay. Last question. How could someone like me, like from the RTLB, from Gisborne, how could I make a difference, or how could I support some of the work that's being done with tamariki and the schools in Wairoa. Is it, like for the average person, is there anything that I could do from a distance, or is there anything that I could learn from your story that would make me better, in my role?
Move to Wairoa.
Mhm.
That I said that to another person recently. They want to help, but obviously there comes the challenge of
Yeah,
housing and all the
of
rest of
course.
it. But we would love more people like yourself to be Wairoa based. But whilst you're not, just knowing that we've got RTLB that we can call on with strengths and understanding Wairoa. So your research here is a step to understanding Wairoa better.
Yeah.
Um, and for someone like a Napier to say, "Oh, we'll send a speech language therapist and to me," if they don't get Wairoa, it's almost pointless because we see them walk in our office, and you can tell a person's being before they speak, and it's almost people who um, know Wairoa better. Like I was saying about those foreign teachers, and when I say foreign, I mean from the South Island as well,
Mhm.
or anywhere that doesn't have a high population of Maori, is unless you know Wairoa or try to know Wairoa and try to understand how quirkily unique we are, then you're gonna struggle because we um, we are a unique being.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. I completely understand what you
mm,
mean, eh?
mm,
And I'm hoping that when I come to produce this community story, that I'm able to articulate that, and so that the people who are marking it will
mm.
understand that as well.
Yeah,
That things have to be done a little bit differently sometimes in
yeah.
places like Wairoa.
And I think I do think the government is getting it more than they've ever understood it before.
Yeah.
So the silver lining to a natural disaster is that we have a response team, and who are keeping education, health, social housing, and everything at the top for Wairoa. And I really believe that they're not going to let go. It's going to be like a dog with a bone.
That's really good to
Um,
hear, because often when you have a big disaster like that,
mm,
the 3 weeks afterwards, they're right in
yeah,
there and they're on the news every night. And
mm,
then after that, things trail
yeah,
off. And
yeah,
down the track, you hear people from Waira going, hey, you've
yeah,
forgotten about us.
yeah.
That's really good to hear.
Yeah, so we have a project leader called Benita Tahuri. She's driving it and really good. She's Wairau born, Wairau returned, um, and is passionate about making sure Wairau's not forgotten. So,
Well, that's pretty much everything, Richie. I don't want to take up any more
no,
of
but it's
your
been
time. I
helpful.
could actually sit here and talk to you for another couple of hours easily, I think.
No, it's
Is there anything else that you'd like to add, Richie, about Wairoa's story? Or
uh, I think it would be if you had time to interview one more person who is an outsider
yeah,
who's come into Wairau. And obviously that ties into it.
okay,
If you were able to, because you know how I was saying about people connecting with and understanding,
yeah,
Di is one who has come. We're friends. We're very good friends, and with Lee, we all
yeah.
went through Wairau office. But she has a uniquely external experience, and I'm sure if you have time. If you don't, she would
Even
have
if
a
I don't have time before the cut-off date, if
yeah,
I wasn't able to do it, it's still worth having that
yeah,
conversation anyway,
yeah,
isn't it?
yeah, absolutely. So if you're able to come down
So
again,
she, because she's not born and bred Waira, she's got a slightly different lens on it. Is that what
she
you're
has,
kind of
and so
saying?
she came from Africa to Havelock North, taught at Desal 10,
Yeah,
but fell in love with Wairau.
right.
And it's just all about Wairau in many ways. So, yeah, if you had
Awesome.
the opportunity to.
Yeah, thank you. I'll maybe try and track her down. I know she's
Mm,
quite good friends with Chris Vincent, So,
Yeah,
I might be able to,
yeah. And she's up here from time to time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ritchie.
No worries. Thank you for the coffee too.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Okay.
Now, at any time, if you decide that you don't want to, go ahead
Yeah.
with me publishing this, you just let me know. And
No, it's fine,
do
truly.
that. But no, thank you so much for your time today.
Genuinely don't believe I've said anything that would incriminate me years down the line.
No. Well, thank you so much, Ritchie.
No, 3 days. Are you leaving now? Or are you going to go around with me?